Marcus. In today's video, we're going to talk about what to expect your 1L year of law school, your first year of law school. This time of year, a lot of people are finishing up undergrad and are thinking about going to law school. And shout out because I got an email, someone emailed me, had some questions, so I figured, hey, this is a good opportunity. I started this attorney talk series and I wanted to make sure I had some content to help people, so I appreciate the email with the questions to give me a little bit of focus, and hopefully this video helps. So I'm going to first talk a little bit about my experience about my first year of law school, then I'm going to go through about maybe 8 tips or so on how to prepare, things you need to take into consideration when going through your first year of law school. So let's go ahead and jump in. I started law school. I'm definitely an untraditional law student. I didn't come straight from high school, college, and undergrad. I took a crazy route. I graduated high school, went to college for 2 years, went to the military for 4 years, finished undergrad in a year, and then went to law school. So my perspective is a little unique. By the time I was in law school, I took an untraditional route to law school. Most people are, in their early 20s when they started law school. I was in my mid-20s at the time that I started law school. I had a wife, I had a mortgage, I had a son who was a newborn, so law school was a little bit of crazy for me. By the time I started law school, I had already been married, had a mortgage, and went to Iraq and bust some heads, so my perspective is a little bit unique. So the first thing is I'll talk about my impression of the type of people you'll meet in law school. You got to think about it. Most people who attend law school, who want to go to law school, are just overachievers. Most people who are in law school or actually thinking about law school typically tend to be the overachievers, the people who finished the top of their class, always got A's. So it's kind of that mindset. So that being said, it's super competitive. If you aren't used to a competitive atmosphere, you need to get used to a competitive atmosphere. Everything is about grade, finishing in the top 10%, where you're working. That's just kind of the nature of the beast. Now, I will tell you, I took courses at my small law school, but I also took some courses at a more affluent law school down the street. So just to kind of put the competitiveness into perspective, one of the craziest things I saw is, you go into the library, you need a textbook so you can get some work done for class, and when you get to that textbook and open it and you turn to that page where you think you're going to get that good information, the page is ripped out. Now, that's not every law school, but I've seen that happen, so it gets pretty competitive. That's one thing that you have to take into consideration. The other thing is that, with regard to me and my experience in law school, I typically I'm not a sociable person. I'm a sociable person, but I'm not a sociable person for purposes of law school's sake. I don't want to sit and talk about the law all the damn time. I don't want to talk about who's doing what. I can honestly care less. So that being said, I wasn't a big social butterfly in law school. I did what I needed to do so I can get back home and relax and enjoy my family. So that was kind of my blueprint. So I just wanted to provide some insight on my perspective, because my perspective on things is a little unique. Now first, let's talk a little bit about your first year curriculum, the courses that you're going to take. Okay, so the curriculum for your first year, you're going to definitely have torts. For those who don't know, torts are those civil, legal causes of actions that you see people sue for in court all the time. Battery, false imprisonment, trespass, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Those are kind of some of the examples of what torts are, is those non-criminal actions. So for example, I commit a crime, I'm found not guilty for the crime, but I get sued civilly in court for wrongful death. I get sued civilly in court for intentional infliction of emotional distress, and I lose and I got to pay up a lot of money. So that's the first course that you're going to have to take, is torts. There's also going to be contracts, so you're going to learn about bilateral, two-party contracts, and unilateral contracts, more of a one-party contract. The next class you're going to definitely take is criminal procedure, criminal law. You definitely have to take property, and you're going to take constitutional law. Then a lot of times you'll have like a legal writing course to show you how to write in a legal format. because writing and doing legal writing is completely different from anything that you may have learned in undergrad. So just go ahead and forget all of that stuff now so you can learn anew and focus on how to write and express your argument in the proper legal format. Here are a list of some things that you really need to know before you start law school. First and foremost, networking starts now. It starts day one from the time you get that acceptance letter and you sign those documents saying you're going to go there. Again, I have a short fuse for stupidity, and like I said, I'm not the most sociable person in the world. Like I said, again, I was a little bit older than everybody. I've been to a war zone and did some army stuff and a whole bunch of other stuff that normal people who were in law school didn't experience. So I got a short fuse for stupidity, or what I deem as stupidity. So with that being said, you definitely want to make an effort not to burn any bridges. You never know who you may be in a position to help down the road, or who may be in a position to vouch for you or provide you some assistance or introduce you into a particular contact that may be advantageous to your professional development. So you want to start doing those contacts and connecting with people early. You're going to meet a lot of people from diverse backgrounds. So it would definitely behoove you to make sure that you, again, start building those inroads now, because it's all about who you know, and your connections can be vital in the development of your professional career. The next thing you have to remember, number 2, is that it's a marathon, not a race. Now, let me tell you a little bit about how my law school operated and how some law schools operated. A lot of law schools have a strict curve, so most people tend to fall within that grading curve. However, a lot of law schools, if you don't meet a certain GPA, after one semester you may be on academic probation. After another semester, and if you fail to meet that GPA, you might not be there. I think everyone really kept it real and focused and was honest, like, hey, a lot of the people who you start with, you may not finish with. The curriculum is a rigorous one, and not everyone is successful. You can be successful if you take steps to set yourself up, but you have to be realistic about the situation. So again, it's a marathon. You have to pace yourself. It's going to be a crap load of reading. I would probably say 500 to 800 pages of reading a night. That sounds crazy, but those cases can get long. Reading those cases, doing the outlines, writing the notes, doing the case briefs. So I would say about 500 pages a night, more or less, is about what you have on average. So you have to definitely pace yourself. You don't want to get burnt out. That's hard to say. You know, me personally, again, I wasn't that type of social butterfly. I think I went to maybe one law school party my entire time there. And even when I went to that party, I didn't like it, because I remember I went there and somebody said something like, oh man, that's your third drink. And then by that time, of course, I just flipped into, me mode. And I was like, what the hell are you watching my drinks for? So it was getting a little ridiculous, but I'm not really a social person. But you do have to balance your work and your school schedule with your social life. Or you could just do like I did. I really didn't care about that shit. Pardon my language. But I was just focused. I had a mission to do. I had a family, a mortgage. I didn't have the luxury of not passing the bar exam and having to study for months to take it 6 months later. I just didn't have that luxury. I had something I needed to do, and I had folks who were relying on me besides myself. The number 3 thing that I'm going to talk about is you can do this whole law school thing, but do it the right way. When I was in law school, everyone, and it's actually common when you get to professional degrees, the doctors and the lawyers and those type of advanced degrees, where everybody was all excited about Adderall. They take Adderall, get prescriptions for Adderall so they can focus. That shit is corny. Try to avoid that if possible. You can do it without all of that unnecessary stuff. That stuff has some long-term side effects if you don't really need it. So I would advise to, keep your nose clean while you're there. Take care, handle everything on your own. Number 4 is be prepared to get called on and get embarrassed through the Socratic method. So this is essentially the Socratic method. And this is just how law school works, okay? You go to a class, the instructor will give you a crap load of reading to read. You'll try to get through that reading and may get through it all, may not get through it all. Then the next day you go to that class, you're sitting there and you're just with your fingers crossed praying, please don't let this instructor call on me. And if the instructor calls on you, this is pretty much the conversation. Mr. Jones, Miss Smith, please tell us about the Brown decision. Then they're quiet and you have to talk. And so if you aren't prepared, you're going to look foolish. They're going to do everything in their power to embarrass you. That's just kind of how the game goes. What the expectation is when you read those cases, you have to be able to identify the issue, what was wrong or what the court was arguing about in the case, the rule, what particular law did they use, the analysis. You got to talk about, well, what facts did they use to support the rule? What facts did they use to apply the rule to, and how did those marry together? And then is just a follow-up of, in this conclusion. In conclusion, the court ruled that the defendant's motion to XYZ, XYZ, XYZ. So that's kind of the format. But again, there's a lot of reading, so be prepared. You're going to get a cold call. You're going to get embarrassed. It's inevitable. Now, unbeknownst to me, I literally just found this out like a week ago. Apparently, all my classmates were on like Google Chats. So when somebody got called on, if they were looking goofy in class, they could just look down at their computer, and hopefully one of their classmates or colleagues was typing something to help them get over the hump. Me, I had no clue about this. I was actually bringing a notebook and paper to class because I was writing my notes out, because I know if I have a computer, I'm going to be looking at the stock ticker. I would have been on ESPN. And so unbeknownst to me, I didn't know that they were doing that. I probably could have got embarrassed less than I did during my time in law school, but that's just kind of how it works. So if you have a study group, that whole Google Chat thing may be a good support system, but at the end of the day, it's on you to read the material, understand the material, and be able to present that material in an effective but concise manner. The number 5 thing you have to consider, law school is probably 60% organization, 40% memory. I think that's really a good balance of what you need to be successful. I'll tell you myself, I don't have a photographic memory, but it's pretty close. And the reason you have to have a relatively decent memory is because all of the rules, all of the laws, a lot of times you have to memorize those. I can count on one hand the number of classes that I had where I was allowed to take notes for an exam. It just normally doesn't work that way. You just show up, hopefully you got it in your head. And so why you really need to memorize the rules is because, so this is kind of how law school works. If you're sitting in a criminal law class, they'll give you a fact pattern, you read it, then you have to read that fact pattern, you have to identify what particular rule of criminal law are they testing. Are they testing me on first-degree murder? Are they testing me on assault and battery? Are they testing me on arson? What is this fact pattern that I'm reading about this crazy scenario they gave me testing? Once you identify with the rule, this is why your memory is important, because you have to know all of the rules up here. Once you identify the rule, you'll write your essay out in this format: issue, rule, analysis, conclusion. The issue is whether the defendant can be convicted on first-degree murder charges. That's the issue. The rule: first-degree murder is an unlawful killing of a human by another with malice aforethought. So you got your issue, you got your rule. For the analysis, you have to take all of the facts in the fact pattern that gave you and apply them to all of the elements of the particular rule to either determine if the defendant could be convicted of first-degree murder, or determine if all the elements of the rule aren't met and he can't be convicted of first-degree murder. So that's kind of, and then you finish it off with a conclusion. Issue, rule, analysis, where you marry the facts to the rules, and then conclusion. I'll tell you, with a lot of law school exams, they can go both ways. Some essays have a strict answer. If a person is convicted of first-degree murder, it was premeditated, you don't have a lot of wiggle room. But some classes, such as property, to determine if a person acquired a piece of property through adverse possession, that means you own a house, but you don't live in that house, and I just move in and squat in that house and sit in that house for 6 years. Is that house mine through adverse possession? Did I adversely take that property and made it mine? And so some essays, it really doesn't make a difference what the answer is. The answer could be yes or no. It just depends on your analysis, how well you marry the facts to the particular rules and the elements within the rules. So that's kind of how those law school classes work. The number 6 thing you have to take into consideration is forget whatever it is that you learned in undergrad, because it's completely irrelevant. Even the way you write is irrelevant. Legal analysis, legal thinking, legal writing is a completely new and different process. So a lot of times if you hold on to those old things that you learned in undergrad, it'll come back and burn you in the end. You got to be humble to realize that, hey, this is something new that I don't know. I mean, I've seen people who worked in law firms and they try to challenge teachers and classes, and that shit does not go well. So don't be that person, don't be that individual. Again, just remember, this is all new. Everything is done different. You have to learn how to think different. You have to learn how to do analysis different. You have to learn how to do legal writing different. So you have to be open to that. The other thing you have to have is the school always has resources to help the students out. They have study instructors, study guide, teachers have office hours, and a lot of teachers are actually willing to meet with you during their office hours if you take initiative to show, hey, I don't understand this, or I need this, and I need a little bit of direction. I tell you, for me, teachers who are nice, I tend to do worse in their class because they were nice. I like teachers who are kind of assholes. Like if you're a teacher, you're tough, you're kind of a jerk. Those are the classes I thrive in because I thrive in that pressure. And just so you know how law school exams work, it's not like typically in college where you get 15 assignments and a group project and all that. No. It's normally one test per class. You start the class, they give you a bunch of information, and at the end of the class, here's the one test. If you pass it, God bless you. If you fail it, Godspeed. That's just kind of how it works. For me, I actually enjoy that pressure. I like having that pressure of knowing that it's one exam, it's sink or swim. That works for me. If I had 10 exams, I already know I'm going to coast through the first 2 because I got 8 more left to do, so I can kind of pace myself. Some professors in your first year, if you're lucky and if they're nice, they may give you a practice exam, like a midterm. But a lot of times these midterms only account for 10 to 15% of your final grade. So, again, what you get on the final is most times what you get in the class. I remember I had one midterm, a professor gave me a midterm, and I got a D on it, and I was like, oh man, this is terrible. Ended up getting a B plus in the class. So the midterms are that insignificant of a percentage. You can completely flunk it and still get a B in the class and do relatively well. Number 8, again, it's your first year of law school. It's really an opportunity for you to determine if you like it. I wasn't really excited after my first year of law school. I was like, I didn't really like the general personality of what most law students display. It was kind of annoying, but I had already committed with the loan, so I said, hey, I'm going to go ahead and finish this thing up. But I can guarantee you that if you're successful your first year, each year gets easier. I mean, it's all about expectation. Once you find out what the expectation is and how to present the information you need to present, it gets easier. I guarantee you I worked less hard each year after my first year, but my grades continue to go up because I knew what the expectation was, I knew what the professors expected, I knew how to write in the proper legal format, I knew how to convey a legal argument that was concise, detailed, and based on the facts that were provided. So you can maneuver this thing, you can make it through your first year. I will tell you, like I said, I wasn't a social butterfly in my first year of law school, so I didn't do all the partying and the social events because I didn't care about that. I was there for a purpose and for business, but most people aren't going to do that. You want to have that social life, but make sure you balance it out because I've seen all the horror stories of the people who are great at the 1L basketball game versus the 2 L's, and then next year they're not even there. So you definitely want to focus. One of the main things I think is, and this is just a little bit of extra, but after your first year, that's when your internships are really determined. So there's always a big push to finish in the top 10%. There's always a push to be on Law Review. That's pretty much a law school newspaper. So there's always a push to be on a law review. There's always a push to be on like a moot court or a trial competition team. And so the more you do those things, if you do those things and you finish in the top 10%, it makes you a lot more attractive to prospective employers. And most people want to land those big time law firm jobs. But those jobs are few and far between. I can tell you in law school, I was a guy with my hat on backwards, a jersey, some Jordans, and an Averex jacket. That shows how old I am. I had an Averex jacket on that nobody would have thought that I was doing as well as I was until it was time to interview. So I had all these interviews with all these big time law firms and I was wearing suits every day. But at the end of the day, you'll find something that's comfortable for you. I think my first internship, I clerked with a federal judge here in DC. My second internship, I clerked with justice on the North Carolina Supreme Court. So it's definitely, you can definitely find those jobs. I wasn't one of those big law people, but at the end of the day, I get them. At the end of the day, hey, you get in where you fit in, and what you end up doing is most of the times where the man upstairs really wanted you to be. That's pretty much it. Those are the things that I would probably give for that first year of advice. A little bit about the course curriculum, some of the things that 8 things you can do to kind of help you prepare, and things you should consider to help you on what your expectations of the first year is. Now I'm going to answer a few questions because I'm not going to blow them up because they don't want me to blow them up. But I appreciate the questions that were emailed to me. It gave me a little bit of direction where to go with this video. And if anyone do got any questions on the debt-free journey of the finances or about this lawyer stuff, definitely about this attorney stuff, about this counselor of law stuff, that's what people like to be called. Definitely hit me up, let me know, and I'll do a video on it, try to get those questions answered. So the first question is to talk a little bit about the transition from being able to practice, let's say, family law into moving into tax law or criminal law. Well, that's one of the things that's really great about a law degree. It's an extremely versatile degree. I would never want to do family law because it's just too much. You think criminal law criminal law, I've been doing criminal law for over 10 years. Criminal law, people are going to jail all the time. I've been on both sides, the defense side. I've been on both sides, the defense side, the prosecution side. People are going to jail for years. I mean, I'm talking major sentences here where they're going away. And as stressful as handling a case like that is, I don't want any parts of family law. I've seen family law cases where couples are fighting over who gets the parakeet and all sorts of crazy stuff. I mean, it could get utterly ridiculous. But I digress. Back to the point. It's fairly easy to transition into any field that you're interested in. I guess the most difficult field to transition in would be intellectual property law. Now, here's what I mean by intellectual property law. Intellectual property, trademark, patents, all those kind of that kind of stuff in tech where this is our trademark to how we develop the iPhone, or these are the rights we own to this particular song. It's those type of nuanced things. That area is a little bit unique because that area is a little bit unique because it has its own bar exam. There's a trademark patent bar exam you can take, and in order to sit for that bar exam, you need a certain amount of computer science type classes. In undergrad, I did major in computer science, but I ended up switching my major. Subsequently, after graduating law school, I was like, oh, this intellectual property thing looks interesting, and it's a very, very lucrative field. But I was like 2 undergrad classes short of the required computer science courses to actually sit for the bar exam. And I could have went back and took those 2 courses, but I was like, I don't. If it was rough for me being about 4 years older than everybody else in law school, I damn sure didn't want to go back and sit with a bunch of 18, 19, and 20-year-olds in undergrad to do an undergrad course. I was like, I'm good. But outside of intellectual property, everything else is relatively easy. If you have your own practice and you do criminal law and you wake up tomorrow and want to practice family law, put on your webpage that you practice family law. Everything else, you don't have any additional courses for tax or property or debtor-creditor law. You don't need anything additional for that. In addition, a lot of times, a lot of the local bars that you're a membership of, if you're a member of the DC bar, the Virginia bar, a lot of times they'll have special sections within that bar that focus on that skill area that'll allow you to take courses in that area to get your skills up in that area so you can practice effectively. All attorneys, no matter where you bar, they have a CLE, continuing legal education requirement, where you have to do a certain amount of training every year in certain areas, and that's because the law is always changing. So those CLEs allow you to learn more about an area that you want to start getting in if you want to switch or something to that effect. The next question relates to the transfer of your ability to practice in one state to another, how that works. And that's relatively simple. You can actually go to Google and type in bar exam reciprocity. And so essentially what happens is, I'll give you my example. I went to law school in North Carolina, graduated in North Carolina, took the North Carolina bar exam, passed the North Carolina bar exam, practiced there for over 3 years. When I was ready to come back to DC, I was like, I don't want to take another bar exam. But a lot of states, DC is one of those places, it's a city that has a provision where you can waive into their local bar. You have to have a certain score on the bar exam. You have to have been practicing for a certain amount of years. You have to fill out an application, and you have to, of course, have that guap, have that payola, because it's all about the money. But once you do those things, you can wave into DC and start practicing law without even sitting for a bar exam. But other states do have partial exams, like Maryland, for example. If I'm not licensed in Maryland, I can waive in, but they do have an exam that's a partial attorney exam. It's open book. It really sounds weird. So, but that's kind of how Maryland works. So you have some states that'll just allow you to pay the money, and if you've been practicing for a certain amount of time, you fill out an application and you're good. Other states may have some more complex process. California is one of the unique places where they typically don't allow anybody to waive in because they want you to do everything from scratch, and they actually have a 3-part bar exam. Most bar exams consist of an MBE, which is 100 multiple choice. Then the next part is an essay where they'll give you a fact pattern, and based on that fact pattern, you have to figure out, are they testing me on criminal law, property, and go through that whole identifying the rule and analysis. And then, so that's most states' bar exam, that 2-part, the multiple choice and the essay portion. Well, California and maybe a few other states have this as well. I'm not sure, but I know for certain California does, where you have that multi-state bar exam, the multiple choice, the essay, and then they have like a practical part where you may have to like draft a will or something crazy like that. But it's unique. A lot of states offer reciprocity where you can just practice there with an application and money, so long as you've been practicing for a certain amount of time or have a certain score on your bar exam. Now, I will tell you, when you're licensed, everybody think, oh, I want to be licensed in all these different places. Be very careful of being licensed in certain places or too many places, because like I said, you have a CLE requirement, continuing legal education. You have to have a certain amount of hours of, you have to have a certain amount of training time every year. If you're licensed in 5 places, New York, California, DC, those are, one, bar costs that you're going to have to pay, which is going to be anywhere from $400 to $1,000. So in bar costs every year just to have that ability to practice. And if they have CLE courses, these are courses you're going to have to pay in each of these jurisdictions. So if you're going to maintain multiple licenses, you have to be aware that it's a cost to do business. You can't have a bar license and not expect to pay for that bar license every year. There's annual fees you have to pay every year, so you definitely have to take that into consideration. I appreciate you all tuning in. Like, subscribe, comment. Hey, again, I appreciate the questions. I did wanted to talk a little bit more, so I'll probably do this a little bit more often. I appreciate it. Y'all take care. Peace.